Last week, we were finally able to beat Kikowani Station without a Banshee, which was one of the major levels of all of Halo that stopped us from doing a perfect no-driving run. But if you guys remember, there are more levels that do provide a bit of conflict when trying to beat Halo without using any vehicles. Still, we were really excited about our accomplishment from last week. Me and the Kikowani squad were messing around in Halo 4 earlier this week, trying to see if there was any way to get further on the Ghost run, while we made some really awesome discoveries that might further our progress on that level down the road. After a few hours, we decided to take a break and just mess around on one of the other levels that caused us some problems, specifically Halo 3's The Covenant. And honestly, just messing around and glitching on this level made us make a massive discovery that potentially could lead to a strategy allowing you to complete this level without any vehicle whatsoever. And yeah, we tried this one before and we couldn't do it, but maybe with this new knowledge, something different can happen. Let's go ahead and take a look at The Covenant. So before we can just kind of break apart what happened when we were recording earlier this week, we really need to understand what the Covenant Hornet problem is. Essentially, if you're trying to beat the level The Covenant from Halo 3 without any vehicle whatsoever, you run into a massive problem when you get to the section where there are Hornets. Essentially, you're expected to fly your Hornet to the third tower while fighting off some Banshees and stuff in the air, and get inside the tower to activate the last beacon, opening up the shield that allows you entrance into the final area where the two scarabs drop. However, since there is a Hornet section, you're expected to fly over all of this water to get to the third tower. And honestly, there is no way that we could find when we were doing our no driving runs a way to potentially avoid flying a Hornet if we wanted to continue on with the level. The water will insta-kill you if you get too deep, and even trying to find little areas on the side didn't lead us to anything. We had even tried exploring what could happen with the Pelican up there. We had no luck, and of course, we did try glitching out of the map, going to the end section and backtracking in, and even messing around with some of the different mechanics outside of the map, being limited of course because we didn't have any access to using ghosts to break barriers and try time travel glitches. So we definitely were limited on options, and we deemed this challenge as something we maybe couldn't do. But after some tedious Halo 4 gameplay, the Kikowani squad was ready to maybe take a look at a new challenge. Seriously, anything just to take a break from the tedious exploration we had been doing on Halo 4. So of course the boys were back together with me, Rocket Elijah, serving mostly as the tour guide for this glitch, where I would kind of recap everything we had tried before so the squad could maybe get a better feel for what challenges we might have ahead. Dim Entree, our resident map breaker and all knowledgeable Halo player, decided he would dedicate a lot of his time to try to help us figure this one out as well. Prism actually made it online too to join up for this challenge. Hopefully his internet doesn't lag out this time around. And then we had Tails, who had managed to fall asleep, so he's nowhere in this video or challenge. Damn it, Tails. So like that, we jumped back into the Covenant to see what we could try to figure out this time around. So starting things off, we approached this level just standard to how you would expect to play through this level maybe, but one of the main things we wanted to try differently this time around was we were only going to try to glitch out of the map after we activated the first tower and the Hornet section was loaded up. Before, we had tested out different theories, trying to just get out of the map and skip straight to the area we wanted to go to, but we decided it probably would be beneficial if we at least hit the first tower switch before doing anything else. So from there, after activating the first tower, we exited the tower. We actually went all the way back to where the Hornets were and then traveled back up the hill so that the game would load the Hornet section correctly and think that we're supposed to be traveling on the Hornets, and did a quick grenade jump that actually can get you up onto this tower very easily, where you can then drop down and climb up the mountain. Honestly, you can get very disoriented by how these textures work when you start to get outside of the map, and essentially you break Halo slowly but surely as you go into this, and the further we get, the more it breaks. But if we push up in the right corner, eventually the game will think we're later on in the level, and it will load the final area of the level early. Of course, this might seem great, but the way that Halo works is it actually sequentially likes to load the game. So even though we're at the end area in this beginning section, we can't just go to the end of the level and have the level end. The game wants us to check all the boxes and complete all of the objectives before it'll let us complete this level. which means even though we're in the later section of the game, we still have to make our way back to the loading sequence that they expect us to do next, which is trigger the third tower. So our main goal is to find a way back to that third tower that we can't get to unless we ride in a Hornet. Now at this point in this run, we were mostly just messing around. I was mostly just kind of trying to show Dim what we had known so far, and while he is aware and familiar with this glitch, he actually hadn't done it yet himself, and Prism was just happy to be along for the ride. He had never even seen Halo break like this before. But my hopes were that if we kind of explored the sandbox, maybe we could come up with some new theories that we could put to test later. We kind of explored the outskirts of the map and saw what we could do while we were up on the mountain. We tried climbing up and making our way to the second and third towers, but we never seemed to be able to get close enough. And then we dropped down into the canyon area where, of course, this canyon is so lovely, but once you pass through a certain area, it actually spawns an invisible barrier where you can't backtrack back into the area you were just in, as the game doesn't expect you to be that far ahead yet. And of course, after pushing through the canyon, you get to this door, which is essentially the door just on the other side of the third tower where we need to be anyways. That only opens up once you hit the switch in the third tower. And while the texture on the backside of this door is really wonky, we couldn't find a way to clip through this door yet again. And of course, as always with this stupid canyon, we got stuck in the canyon because essentially the invisible barrier spawned behind us and the main door in front of us still was closed, so we were stuck here. But that didn't stop us from trying to find a way out. Thought maybe with 3 players we could get a way to maybe jump over the canyon wall and maybe even make our way to the third tower. Well, we didn't have too much luck. We tried jumping on rocks, we tried going up inclines, we even tried jumping from this tree that only I could seem to make it up onto, no matter how much Dim and Prism tried. So we were essentially stuck, so we chose to reset the level again and maybe see if we could find some other areas to test in that later section of the level. And this is where things got really interesting. This time around, when we glitched outside of the map, I made it a point to kind of backtrack into the level where we had just came from. Once we passed the barrier that triggered the last section of the level, I tried to make my character model move backwards to where we just quote-unquote were before the loading sequence shifted. And what this ended up doing was let me stand way back behind the mountain, keeping my back against kind of this invisible wall. But as I sidestepped to the left, I was actually able to make more distance going down following the route of the towers without having to get too close to the cliff walls that would end up being too steep to climb back up later on. Essentially, I was kind of in a new area I hadn't been able to get to before. Honestly, during this time, we were all just kind of happy to be exploring this area because there still was a lot of things in this level we hadn't really discovered before. But I was curious to see what would happen if I walked all the way over by the third tower, or maybe even walked kind of to that time travel area where a lot of other players in the past have been able to pull off some really interesting Hornet glitches where you could kind of clip your Hornet through and get to the earlier part of the level again. Well, as I was exploring and just kind of walking around, very suddenly and randomly, the level reloaded back to the Hornet section, and we all died. Yeah, not very climactic, I know. But honestly, this was a huge stepping stone because it revealed to us a lot of very interesting things as to what's going on in this level, specifically with the way that the level handled the spawn. As soon as I triggered that platform, kind of tucked behind the third tower, it actually forced Dim and Prism to also teleport and load over to their corresponding position based onto where they were exploring at that time. And of course, we all died and fell to our deaths because we were in this huge open area full of water, but it did give us some more questions as to if maybe there's a way we can manipulate how this spawning area works. It did give us the theory that if we could somehow trigger that loading sequence to happen again, maybe if we have Dim and Prism in a place where they're prepared to survive the fall or survive the reload, perhaps we could use that as a spawn point and make our way over to that third tower without having to use a Hornet anyways. This was a huge discovery and at least opened the door for more possibilities as to what could possibly come next and what we could try to work with from here. So we jumped back into the glitch again, this time kind of having a little bit more of a concrete strategy, even though we still didn't have a full understanding as to what on earth is going on in this level. The main idea was Prism and I would go ahead and try to find that respawn loading point once again, and Dim would stick behind and stay at the second tower, because if for whatever reason Prism and I can't find a safe way to find a passage to the third tower, maybe maybe starting from the second tower would at least give us more options to test out and see if maybe we can find our way from the second tower to the third tower a little easier. So we walked around some more, making our way all the way to the third tower, and while I had a general idea where I thought the load sequence was, I was having a little bit of trouble finding it. Dim decided to stick at the tower just in case I did find it, and of course Prism was over at the third tower. I was kind of confused as to why I couldn't find the trigger this time or what I maybe had done differently, kind of getting worried that maybe it was just a fluke that I had even hit it in the first place, and it was kind of looking like maybe we had done something wrong and messed it up and we'd have to reset again. In this time, Dim was kind of getting a little impatient as I was having trouble finding the trigger point and decided to leave his post at the second tower to see if he could help me find it, so that at the very least, if we both died in the process, maybe Prism being at the third tower would be where we needed him to be. And during the time that Dim was walking over to try to help me, I finally found the trigger, and honestly, I had no idea what was going on next. I actually thought my Xbox had crashed or Halo had crashed because we broke the level so much. I had this weird moment where I could see inside my own character's body. Half of my textures were completely smeared across the screen, and I could see a little area of where the Hornet was. I thought maybe I'd even lagged out until I realized my party chat was still going and I could still hear my teammates. As it turned out, the game did something very interesting, and we still don't fully understand why, but we have some theories as to what ended up happening. For whatever reason, during the process of me hitting the trigger, the game took into account, as it had before, the corresponding locations of all of the players that were doing this when loading in the new sequence. However, in the process of Dim walking back, he actually ended up passing up an area that would have typically killed him and may have actually triggered another loading sequence that somehow teleported Prism all the way from the third tower over to where Dim had been, and it just so happens that where Prism was at that time was this snowy area, still outside of the map, but a safe enough area that allowed the two players to land up there safely without dying. Now, the reason I was in this weird limbo state was because, as it turned out, I was inside of a rock. Honestly, they said I just had become one with the earth, and honestly, I was okay with becoming this weird earthly sediment if it meant we could maybe finally beat this level without a vehicle. From there, all we had to do was find a way down to that third tower, and we could possibly pull this thing off if the game didn't continue to break even worse than where we already were. Dim actually took a really risky slide off of the mountain, but managed to survive, and at that point it actually hit another loading sequence, which took me out of the earth, which was nice because I was just happy to finally get to play the game again. And of course, Prism did not make the slide. Unfortunately, rest in peace. At this point, I was just hyped to be out of the rock wall and hyped to actually be in front of the third tower without even touching a Hornet. We went in, we took out the third tower's enemies and activated the switch, and we actually were about to enter the last area without having to use a Hornet, and of course, we're now going to have to beat this last area without vehicles as well, which could be a challenge in itself. But hey, at least we had a chance and we were making some serious progress. But we were still concerned about a couple of things. We know that the canyon section of this level does get very finicky when you start glitching around with the loading sequences, and if we hit another invisible barrier once again right here, it would actually end our run and be a complete soft lock. And to put some extra nervousness on top of that, when we were leaving the tower, we noticed this really weird buzzing sound coming from all of our games, which isn't something that's supposed to happen on this level. We think it has something to do with the fact that we broke the game so badly, but we were hoping that we could just persevere, and maybe if we could quickly get to the end of the level before the entire game falls apart on us, we would have an accomplishment here. As we approached where the barrier was, we were really nervous, because after all of that work and all of that random luck, getting this close to beating the level just to get stuck by a stupid invisible barrier would be so devastating. But sure enough, it let us pass through and we were able to continue on. So we pushed through, not using any vehicles, and for getting to the part with the scarabs, we realized we would have a little bit of trouble here if we wanted to do this, of course, without vehicles, but our main strategy was just to come with heavy firepower and then divide and conquer. bunker. Dim went ahead and picked up a plasma turret, which he would use to take out the legs of his scarab, and Prism brought along a fuel rod gun, so hopefully we had enough firepower. At this point, I was just so hyped we had gotten this far, I wasn't even paying attention to what gun I had, so I just went in with a BR hoping that that would maybe work. But we actually had a decent strategy going on, where Prism took out the legs of the left scarab, and Dim took out the right scarab, all on his own. And then of course I was helpful by punching the battery on the left scarab, so I did do something, clearing this section as well without a vehicle, letting us push up to this end section of the level. And after going through all of that, we fought our way in that last bridge room at the end of this level, and we even had a very interesting moment where Dim completely backstabbed us all. But all in all, we were able to finally complete the Covenant without using a vehicle, and this was a huge deal. We definitely did not think this would be something that would really be tangibly possible, as we've tried around with a lot of these glitches before, and it almost seems like the discovery that we made ended up being just a fluke because Dim got too impatient as I was trying something. But all in all, we actually managed to pull this off, and that's something we're really proud of. That's 2 points for Kikawani squad. GG, guys. But hey, after all of that, if you like this video, be sure to subscribe with notifications on for more videos just like this one, and you won't miss anything we upload, even if YouTube's acting all whack. Also, if you want to, you can follow us on Twitter. You can follow me at Rocket Elijah, or you can follow Luke at Rocket Sloth Luke. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time with a brand new video. Bye, guys.